Freedom and beauty to everyone. I am the Technomage and welcome to my review for the last episode of The Lord of the Rings of Power. Yes, it's finally over. This week I am finally being delivered from the weekly torture that is She-Hulk and the Rings of Power. And what do I have to say about this final episode? Honestly, not much. Yes, not much, because unlike She-Hulk's final episode, which gave me no small amount of grief and pain and disgust, this final episode, honestly, I felt nothing. Nothing at all. I don't care that it's over. And this review is going to be really short because following the tradition of previous episodes, very little happens on this final episode. So I honestly don't have much to say, so I'm just going to get to it. So we begin this episode with the stranger, who is walking alone, following the instructions given to him by old Sadok, and he notices that somebody is close by, and he thinks it's Nori. But then her eyes turn white, and it's not Nori, it's Eminem. And the other witches reveal themselves as his servants because he is Sauron. Meanwhile, Galadriel and Halbrand finally reach the Elven city where Celebrimbor and Elrond are, and they are lamenting the fact that they could not procure all the mithril that they needed, and they are deciding how they will break the bad news to King Gil-galad. But Galadriel enters the city and says that Halbrand was wounded 6 days ago, and we have riding without rest since then, and he needs healing. Yes, 6 days of non-stop riding with a mortal wound, and he's still alive. Wow. So that night, Elrond apologizes to Galadriel for not trusting her, and that he will never make the same mistake again of doubting the strong and independent woman. And Halbrand starts establishing a friendship with Celebrimbor based in the fact that both of them are artisans, and he gives him the idea of stretching what little mithril they have into an alloy. Meanwhile, back in Numenor, Elendil's daughter is making a portrait of the king because the king is dying, and they need to immortalize his image in stone in his tomb. But he wakes up, and in his delirium he thinks she is Miriel, and he instructs her to go to the upper floor to the room where the seeing stone is. So she goes there, and nothing else. Yes, this we don't see if she touches the stone or not, if she has a vision or not, and what that vision is about. So this whole scene was absolutely and completely pointless. Meanwhile, back with the elves, Celebrimbor is pitching his idea to Gil-galad that instead of giving mithril to every elf, they will create one object of power for one elf that has to be circular in form. Circular! Wink! But Gil-galad is having none of it because it's too late, and they needed that solution a lot of time ago. Now it's too late, he says. And Celebrimbor insists, saying that they are creating a new type of power, not of the flesh, but over flesh. And Galadriel looks at him suspiciously because those are the same words that Adar told her when he was talking about what Sauron wanted to do after the defeat of Morgoth. But Gil-galad tells him to shut up and they have to vacate the city immediately. So Galadriel inquires further of who told him about those words, if it was Halbrand, but Elrond manages to procure a 3 months, give or take, so they can test Celebrimbor's theory, and they get to work, and Halbrand is invited to the workshop to help with his ingenuity and his novel ideas, but Galadriel is getting really suspicious of him. So she goes to an elf and instructs him to search in their archives about anything and everything they have about the royal bloodlines of the Southlands. Halbrand approaches her and tells her that I can't thank you enough. You have helped me so much. You have helped me reach heights that I could have never reached on my own, and that I will never forget that. And then, very cryptically and even menacingly, he adds, and I'll see to it that no one else does either. Meanwhile, the three witches are trying to convince the stranger that he's Sauron, that he must go to the land of Rhûn to learn to control his magic, and the more he uses his power, the more his memory will awaken. But the four Harfoots are close by, and they decide to take advantage of the fact that one of the witches disappears to go save the stranger. But the stranger was not the stranger, he was Eminem all along, and Old Sadok is mortally wounded, and the three witches are about to kill Nori, but the stranger finally appears and engages them in a duel of magic, but he is quickly subdued. Eminem starts burning the forest around them so she can flush the Harfoots out, and Nori sneaks by, grabs the witch's staff and tries to tell the stranger, you have to help us, but he says, no, I am dangerous, I am evil, and she gives him a speech of, you have to believe in yourself, you decide your own fate, your own future, you have to be whoever you want to be. So he decides to fight the three witches, and they realize he is not Sauron, he is the other, the Ishtar. So he uses the staff to cast a spell and reveals the three witches that they are actually Nazgûl. 3 female Nazgûl. So yes, the Nazgûl in the beginning, the very first Nazgûl were not the 9 kings of men who became wraiths of the ring. No, the first 3 Nazgûl were actually 3 women, because of course. So the stranger casts them out, and the 4 Harfoots manage to see a new sunrise, but Old Sadok dies. Meanwhile, back with the Numenoreans, the Elendil and the Queen are having this conversation about all the sacrifices that they made on the Southlands, and they have to make those sacrifices worthwhile, and they kind of start bonding with one another. So I suppose next season they are going to be an item. So they reach Numenor and they realize the king is dead because all the ships on the harbor are sporting black flags. Meanwhile, back with the elves, they are having a lot of problems with the Mithril because the Mithril doesn't want to bond with lesser materials, no matter how much pressure they apply. But Halbrand has the idea of maybe we don't have to pressure the Mithril, maybe we just have to invite it to bond with other metals. But Galadriel has had enough of him and he pulls him apart and tells her that she knows that there is no king of the Southlands and demands to know his real name. And he tells her, I have been awake since before the breaking of the first silence, and in that time I had many names, revealing himself as Sauron. So she tries to kill him, but he gets inside her mind and shows her images of her childhood in Valinor and the time they were both castaways in the middle of the sea, and he tries to seduce her, showing her images of a possible future together as both king and dark lord and queen of all of Middle Earth. And he tries to smooth talk her with a lot of pretty words, and it seems that it's working.
I am the storm that is approaching.
Thank you, Virgil. So no, it doesn't work, and he says he further taunts her, telling her that all of your friends will abandon you when they know that Sauron lives because of you, and she retorts, "And you will die because of me." And they all both screams, they both shout, and then she is back again under the sea, drowning like she did when she was a castaway with Halbrand. But as I said, all of this was inside her head, and Elrond finds her just laying there on the river, and she goes to Celebrimbor looking for Halbrand, and she realizes that Halbrand is gone, and she tells them that no, Halbrand is not to be trusted, and if he returns, we must not welcome him. And Elrond further inquires what happened in that stream, and she guilts him into silence, saying, "Do not make you told me that not trusting me was a mistake. Don't make that mistake again." And we discovered that it was Galadriel all along who had the great idea of making 3 items of power for the elves. Not 1 because 1 dominates, not 2 because 2 divide, but with 3 there will be balance. And Celebrimbor tells her that he needs gold and silver from Valinor because those are metals of the highest quality, and only those will bond with the mithril. And the only Valinorian gold and silver that they have is Galadriel's knife. Meanwhile, back with the Harfoots, they all return to the main group, and the stranger tells Nori that he has to go to the lands of Rune to learn magic. And Nori asks him, "They call you Ishtar, is that your kind?" And he says, "Ishtar, in your tongue that means wise one, or wizard." So yes, the stranger was a wizard all along. So the Harfoots are about to leave, but Nori's family tells her that she must not go with them, she must go with the stranger because he needs her, and she now is part of something bigger. So she goes with the stranger and tells her that she doesn't know which way to go, and he tells her, "When in doubt, Eleanor Brandyfoot, always follow your nose," revealing that this wizard is actually Gandalf. Fuck off. So they begin with the construction of the items of power. They melt the dagger, add a little bit of mithril, and ta-da! We finally have the Rings of Power in the Rings of Power. After 8 hours plus, we finally get the bloody Rings of Power in the show called The Rings of Power. On the last moment, and Halbrand arrives to Mordor. And that is the end. Yes, that's it. That is the season finale of this series. So, what can I say? I mean, first of all, the stranger needs Nori for everything. Sorry about that. No, stop. Uh, it is Nori who tells her that you must believe in yourself and you must decide your own fate. It is Nori who has to go and with the other Harfoots to rescue him from the three witches. And of course it was Queen Miriel who had to lead the Numenoreans. And where is she? Where did I left her? There she is. It is Queen Miriel, a woman who has to go and rescue the Southlands and muster all the strength of the Numenoreans to go help the Southlands. And of course, how can we forget about the main character of this story, the greatest person who has ever lived, Galadriel. Because she is the one who brought Halbrand, who gave the idea of creating the rings to Celebrimbor, and she is the one who has been right all along, so much so that Elrond had to apologize to her for ever doubting her. And of course she is the one who finally uncovers the truth that Halbrand is not a man, that he is actually Sauron, and she confronts him, and is the one, and she is the one who has the idea that the items of power must be three. So Galadriel has been the great architect of some of the most important events on Middle-earth during the Second Age. And the bloody rings of power in the final moment of the show. I mean, it's like, imagine if in the Harry Potter franchise, Harry Potter appeared in the last moment of the first movie. That the first movie is just Hermione and Ron running around Hogwarts, and in the last moment of the movie they finally meet the eponymous Harry Potter. Or if in the movie, in the first Star Wars film, they just at the end of the movie they finally reach for the stars. They finally go to space, and the whole movie was just Luke Skywalker running around Tatooine. I mean, the pacing on this series has been atrocious. I mean, I already said on my review of the first episode, we constantly jump from one location to another, and back again, and then on to the next one, and the next one, and back again, and again, and again, and again. We just go every episode just jumping from one place to another. And wait a minute, what happened to the dwarves? What happened to Khazad-dûm? And the Balrog? Does the Balrog finally wakes up and destroys Khazad-dûm? Is that Durin's bane? I mean, what questions have been answered on this final episode that we didn't know already? Like, we didn't know that we weren't suspicious enough that Halbrand was Sauron all along, or that the stranger was actually an Ishtar, that he was one of the wizards, and now we even confirm that he is Gandalf. And the Rings of Power, there is no surprise in the crafting of the Rings of Power, because we knew all along that the Rings of Power were going to be present on this series, since the series name is the Rings of Power. And everything was just so boring. Like, just so monotonous. There was no emotion, no action, no suspense, no nothing. And it's very difficult for it to be, taking into account that this is a prequel series for The Lord of the Rings. The main books written by Tolkien, because this series is loosely based on the Silmarillion and the unfinished stories or something like that. So most of this is just fanfic. And you can tell because the narrative is atrocious, the dialogues are asinine, the pacing is horrendous, the direction, the production of this series, beyond their overly inflated budget, is amateurish at best. You have heard me say everything about the design of the costumes, the design of the sets, everything. The CGI is horrible. Everything about in this series is just of such low quality. It is horrible. I mean, what have they done? What did they do with that humongous budget of hundreds of millions of dollars that Amazon Prime invested on this project? But this is over for now because we know this series has been greenlighted for multiple seasons, so at least we have two more of this. So this is the Technomage signing off. Thank you for joining me on this painful journey, and I will see you on the next video. Goodbye.